guys. Today I would like to have a dialogue about feminism. Feminism in general. Now, some may think I am generalizing an ideology such as feminism, which is quite nuanced, and that it is quite unfair to generalize such an ideology. However, I wish to convey in this dialogue or conversation about the roots or the source of this ideology, called what we know as feminism. Um, regardless of its subtleties and nuances, the root from which feminism springs out is the same, right? And here we will be discussing about the roots, the source of it. I'm going to do so by examining feminism from a Marxian sense. That is a Marxian critique of feminism. You see, when I talk about Marxian critique, I don't mean a Marxist view or a communist view or a socialist interpretation of um, of feminism. But when I say Marxian view, I mean those ideas that were those ideas and thoughts of Marx himself, right? So um, this is a topic, this idea about just trying to examine feminism from a Marxian point of view, is a topic which I had an interest for quite a while now, not because I am for or against feminist ideologies, but because in examining an ideology from Marxian point of view, it enables us, right, to become aware of some poignant insights which were previously hidden from us because of our narrow and truncated point of view, right? So this critique of feminism will rely on Marx's concepts of the base, also known as the infrastructure, and the superstructure, right? The base and the superstructure. Now, I would actually prefer, to be honest, I would actually prefer to go in depth into this concept of base and superstructure. But since majority of people rarely have an attention span of more than 30 to 40 minutes, I will keep that for another episode. A quick qualification before we begin. I will be using terms such as capitalism, market economy, and industrialization interchangeably. I am doing this mainly for the purposes of convenience of the viewers, right? For your convenience. With that said, let me give you the very gist, the very basic idea of this ideology. You see, for Marx saw society to be composed of two basic constituent parts: the base or the base also known as the foundation, and the superstructure. Now, to understand the base, also known as the infrastructure or the foundation, to understand the base and its significance, we must recognize its two constituent elements, namely the means of production and the relations of production. Right now, I'll get into that what they mean by that. The means of production are the resources and technology at the disposal of a particular society, and the relationship and the association between them, i.e., resource and technology, and this association between them determines the kind of economic system the society enjoys. For instance, industrial society will have a capitalist system, right? Quite commonsensical. Furthermore, for Marx, the mode of production means a definite form of activity of these individuals, right? These are a definite form of expressing their life, a definite mode of life on their part. Um, for instance, the kind of society, the kind of activity the kind of activity that we do, right, that we carry out, finds its expression, right, finds its expression in the way we live our lives. So something like that, right? So whereas the relations of productions, right, in other words, simply the means of production means that the kind of economic system you have, or the kind of economic the means the kind of economic the kind of uh, uh, the manner in which the society produces things, right, and the relationship among those resources and technologies they give they produce a certain kind of economic activity. So in other words, the means of production is the economic system that the society enjoys. Literally, that means that the means of production equals to the economic system that the society has. Whereas the relations of production, right, on the other hand, it means how human beings, affiliation, be it worker or owners, how these human beings or how these individuals or persons in the society, how they are affiliated to the means of production, right? In other words, the manner in which human beings um, are affiliated with the means of production, either an owner or a worker, determines or establishes the strata of social classes, i.e., the class relations, right? So, um, therefore, naturally, the owner of the means of production, right? The owners of the means of production enjoy the most beneficial position in the economy and thus become members of the most influential social group, or they are the ruling elite. Thus, for instance, in a pastoral society, the ruling group would naturally be those who own the most livestock, right? In an agrarian society, the greatest land, or those who own the latest amount of land, right, would dominate. Likewise, in an industrial society, the capitalist class would naturally be in a dominant position, right? So this Marxist idea of the base is essentially the assertion of his materialistic way of understanding history, also known as historical materialism. You see, this idea of base essentially posits that what we produce in order to live determines all else in society. And this is the underpinning idea behind the base or the infrastructure, also known as the infrastructure or the foundation. The base, in other words, right, is the determining factor. Now, I want you to keep in mind of this, right? The base is the determining factor. It is that which sets the limits to what is capable, right, to what is acceptable, and how things should be done, how they must be carried out, what is proper, and to use Antonio Gramsci's words, even to the extent of deciding what constitutes common sense, right? In other words, it determines the society and persons dwelling in that particular society. That is to say, how society and people live in that society, how life itself is organized, right? What kinds of values, norms, ideologies, governments are propagated, and so on. The base or the foundation, the base of the society, that is the economic and the social class system that entails the base of the society determines the nature of society's superstructure, right? Which rests upon which the superstructure rests upon the foundation. You can think of it as the foundation of a house, right? The foundation determines how many floors or stories a given building can accommodate, right? Whenever you are building a house, right, or a building, whenever you're constructing a building, what do? First thing first, you have to take care. You have to first make the foundation, right? And depending upon how many stories you want, you make the foundation for it. In other words, if you want 3-story building, then the foundation must be laid down that would accommodate that would be strong enough to hold on, right, to accommodate 3 floors, right? So you can think of it as a foundation of a house. First things first, the foundation is very important, right? You can't have you whenever you build a foundation for one building, for one story, for one floor, and then you try to construct 3 stories, 4 stories, that does not last. So likewise, you can think of the base and superstructure as a foundation of a house, right? The superstructure is composed of all the non-material institutions in the society, right? And each is arranged in a way that suits the ruling class's interests, right? Included in the superstructure are values and norms. In other words, these are what constitutes right and wrong, good and bad, beautiful and ugly, ethical and unethical, acceptable and non-acceptable, right? They also include ideology, government, education, law, religion, art, literature, and so on. These are the superstructure. They are based, or they are primarily based, and they are determined by the foundation of the society. The function of the superstructure is to assure, right? In other words, all these norms and values and ideologies, government, etc., etc. The function of this superstructure is to assure the rulers continuous dominance and to keep and to keep the ruled, those who are ruled, in their places. In addition, the superstructure refers to the social institutions, right, such as the political structure and the state, right, or the society's governing apparatus. Marx argued that the superstructure grows out of the base, and the superstructure reflects the ruling class's interests. As such, the superstructure justifies how the base operates and defends the power of the elite. In other words, the superstructure, where norms, values, beliefs, and ideology resides, this superstructure legitimizes the base. It creates the conditions in which the relation of production seems fair and natural, right? Though they may actually be unjustified, right, or unjust and designed to benefit the ruling class only. The base provides the all essential framework which everything else we do has to fit in, right? Everything else we do has to fit into that base. Everything from values to norms to culture to habits, etc., or the ideas about, even the ideas about materialism, right, which we see it as a sign of wealth and status, or trying to equate happiness and meaning of life through consumption of goods, right? Or sometimes we try to equate our self-worth with goods and material things we possess, right? So all these things, everything else is, in this sense, based on the foundation, right? The base, right, the foundation provides the limits to what is possible in any society, right? Furthermore, it is essential to recognize that Marx reframed the relationship between the base and superstructure as dialectical, right? Meaning that each influences the other. Neither the base nor the superstructure is naturally occurring, or they are not static. They are dynamic, right? They are both dependent on because they are both social creations. They are constantly evolving depending on the social interaction between classes or between people, right? So depending on the kind of society one lives in, right, which is dependent on the kinds of economic system that prevails in your society or in my society. So depending on the kind of society you live in, people are compelled or forced to act on the world in certain way. That is, doing things in a certain way, believing in certain norms and ideas, and upholding certain mores and values to be good, values which are taught to be good and proper, right, and so on. And um, and to do this, right, or to act in these certain ways, it requires certain forms of relations between, say, for instance, certain forms of relation between them. In other words, if you live in a very industrial, modern, mass society, right, then the value you or the norms you placed upon, say, for instance, social life is quite loose, or even the concept of marriage is very, very loosely defined. Or you can just marry one day, divorce the other day, with no consequences at all, with no thought, with no second thoughts, right? So even friendships are like that, family lives are like that, right? Relations between genders and so on. These are all dependent on the kind of society you live in. In other words, the kind of society you live in has one prevailing economic system. And what that economic system, according to Marx, right, it's not what I'm saying, it is what Marx is saying. So depending upon the kind of economic system that you have, it also colors or determines the way individuals behave with one another, right? The relations is defined by it. So this thesis, right, this particular thesis, so the thesis of this dialogue of what we're having right now is that just as the base determines and shapes how society is going to be, or what values will be disseminated or espoused, similarly, the very concept and essence of feminism can be understood as a product of a capitalist society, right? That is, feminism is one of the many manifestations of the superstructure that is determined by the base, i.e., the capitalist society. So, feminism, what I'm saying is that, is one of the many manifestations of the superstructure, right? And this is determined by the base. And the very idea of feminism, which is a manifestation of superstructure, is nothing is nothing but a byproduct of the economic system in which they are situated, right? So in other words, it is a capitalist society that enables the very concept of feminism to arise, right? The essence of a capitalist society requires, as Marx had argued, right? The essence of the capitalist society is this, simply of capitalism is this. The capitalists they seek to gain profit, right? They seek for profit over people and over anything else. Profit is primary. This necessitates separation of wages, right? And decline in the working condition, which is essentially the nature of capitalism, right? The nature of capitalism is what? Exploitation. And the essence of capitalism is profit. So certainly, the recent decline in labor, for instance, the recent decline in labor unions across the global market had enabled the wages to steadily decline, and even the wages are being suppressed, while the corporate profits have precipitously increased. So, in other words, this is how we can sensibly grasp feminism, right? As capitalists seek new avenues to employ workers who are willing to work for lower wages, they find in women, right? They find women to fill in that gap, right? They find women to be a good fit that meets the criteria for those who are willing to work for low wages. This is no coincidence that women are, relatively speaking, paid less, right? They are paid less than men, for instance. And there are numerous studies to show that this is the case. However, this is this does not mean that it is unfair or right, because this is the very nature of the capitalist society, right? This is the very nature of capitalism and how it functions or operates. It's there to make sure that the wages are lowered, are suppressed. Thus, to repress the wages in order to earn higher profits, employers take in workers who will work for less. And indeed, capitalists desire more. The capitalist system, right? It necessitates or it desires more women to enter workforce in order to keep the wages low. The capitalist society, right? The very nature of capitalism does not care about women in a sense, right? Why? Because it wants women to enter the workforce. Why? Because it enables the capitalists to keep the wages low, right? And as we have seen, numerous literature, there are numerous studies that says that women do indeed get paid less. So they want women to enter workforce, right? Not because the capitalists actually are benevolent, right? The capitalist and industrial society proselytizes women's individuality, their independence, self-reliance. They try to champion women to take control of their professional and personal destinies, right? By taking charge. Then they even support for strong womanhood, etc., right? While at the same time, they try to sully and denigrate the roles of women as the role of women as housewife, as a mother, as a homemaker, etc. All those roles which women have traditionally occupied throughout the ages in human history, right? So the capitalists and the industrial society, they proselytize such values, not because they truly believe in all these sublime and abstract fantasies and phantoms about feminism, but because the capitalists want the wages of the workers to stay low. It is no wonder that as more and more women entered the workforce throughout the Western society, even the wages steadily declined, right? I am not saying I do not think this is a coincidence, right? Furthermore, the socioeconomic fact also helped feminism, right? As wages were being suppressed, right? And as fewer and fewer men were able to support their families by themselves, what happened is that they needed the help of their working wives. In other words, usually what happened is that usually the father would be working, and there would be a stay-at-home mother caring for the household and children, right? And one working parent, right? Just one working parent was enough for the survival. But now, as the wages are being suppressed, it is no longer possible. Hence, it necessitated women to join the workforce, right? So the throngs of women entering the workforce further encourage the ideas and values related to women's self-reliance and place values on their and place value on their independence as isolated and autonomous mass individuals, right? And to demand that the woman be relinquished from the artificial responsibilities and shackles of household and child rearing duties, which only limits, they say, which only limits and inhibits their natural talents and abilities. So there we go. So right. So thanks to such fantasies, today both men and women are equally exploited. At least the men knows, right? The men they know, but the women are still blinded by the women know. At least men know that they're exploited, but now women they feel like they are exploited but the thing is, but the erroneous view is that women think that only men oppresses women. But in reality, women are still blinded to their exploitation, right, by the capitalist system, which is generally embellished in insubstantial notions such as professionalism, destinies, full potential, self-reliant, independent woman, etc., etc. Right? Of course, most people shy away from critiquing feminism simply because they do not want to be looked upon as weird or as peculiar or as strange or as an oddity. Right? Feminism is simply a means for the capitalist economic system to exploit its workers, which even the supporters of feminism do not comprehend or simply cannot grasp. Right? It is simply one of the many values, because the thing is, feminism is simply one of the many values and ideas that is which is at the very roots determined by the base on which it is situated. No wonder the feminists cannot grasp that, right? They cannot grasp it. What they believe in, they cannot grasp the fact that what they believe in is just a byproduct of the kind of economic system in which they exist. All their feminist ideals, right? If you actually remove all the artificial embellishments, are nothing but another means of exploitation, right? Indeed, feminists would think, oh, what? Feminism as exploitation? That would be unthinkable, they would argue, right? They would even say that it goes beyond our normally accepted common sense. They would say that. And at one point, you may think, yeah, they are right, but remember, Marx, as Marx had shown through his insightful analysis of the workings of the capitalist society, what is unthinkable is damn right possible, and really is. Indeed, even from Antonio Gramsci's analysis, what we think of as common sense is nothing but the values, norms, ideologies of a total dominating system, right? That inundates and soaks every aspect of our consciousness and reality. It is no wonder that feminists frequently, right? They frequently cry about how they have been artificially restrained and how they say feminism seeks to liberate women from such artificial restraints historically placed upon them, right? Right? And hence feminism wants to enable women to take charge of their own personal and professional destinies, right? Feminists call it artificial because feminism as an ideology and theory, right? As an ideology and as a theory lack self-introspection, right? They lack that. And not only that, they're quite poor in history as well as in knowledge regarding evolutionary biology, ethnography, anthropology, and psychology of human society, right? Societies. So, and values such as liberated woman, right, for instance, or taking charge of your own personal and professional destinies is in reality a means to exploit, right? It's nothing but as a means to exploit, a means to keep the wages suppressed. But the women don't see that. They think they are being liberated by going to work, but in reality they go to work so that they are paid less, right? Because by paying them less, the corporation, they earn more profit. They do not want to hire more men. Why? Because if you hire more men, you have to pay them more. Hence, it's better to hire women who will work for less. And hence, that's how it goes. But women see it as, for instance, women see it as empowerment. They don't see that they are being exploited, right? for the benefit of corporation, right? This we have seen in the Marxian, and this what I'm talking about is actually shown in the Marxian model of the base and the superstructure, right? Where the base determines the norms, values in the superstructure, which the people and society hold and follow these norms and values to be commonsensical and even natural, right? Such naturalness, like what Gramsci talks about, right? Is that this naturalness of their values blinds them from becoming cognizant that the values they advance, right? The feminism and all that, independence and self-reliance, blah blah blah. The values they advance are not theirs, but these are the values which the capitalist system encourages, right? Because they encourage such values. Why? Because that enables the ruling or the dominant class in the society, right? Which became dominant because of their relation to the means of production in the first place, right? So it enables preaching and advocating such values enables the dominant class in the society to maintain their interests, right? Values which feminism preaches or advances are themselves the byproducts of capitalist society, which could not have been achievable or probable if the mode of production was something other than capitalist economic system. As Marx in his preface to a contribution to the critique of political economy states, right? It is not the consciousness of man that determines their being, but on the contrary, their social being determines their consciousness. In other words, what we value and what we do politically or in society is determined by our economic circumstances. Of course, I'm not saying that the capitalism is good or bad or that feminism is good or bad. I am only stating that from a Marxian point of view, from a Marxian standpoint, feminism is one of the numerous values and ideas springing out from that particular form of society, i.e. capitalist, that particular form of society based on that particular form of economic system, capitalism. As Marx again states in his preface to the contribution of the critique of political economy, definite form of social consciousness correspond to a society's mode of production. That is, just as an agrarian system encourages large families primarily for the purposes of labor power, right? An industrial society will encourage small families, right? Due to the flexibility of movements and job locations, right? That also espouses lots of personal relations, be it in terms of marriage or family, likewise, etc., etc. So likewise, feminist values themselves are predicated on the very nature and essence of the capitalist economic system in which it dwells, right? In other words, no, the feminist values themselves are predicated on the very nature, the exploitative nature of capitalism, on the very nature and the essence, the profit mongering of the capitalist system, right? So these values are predicated on the very nature and essence of the capitalist economic system in which it dwells. Now, if one were to argue about how feminism is now preached and advocated throughout the world, no, the answer is very simple. It is because now capitalism is what most countries in the world practice or have adopted, right? And so the idea of feminism is similarly given impetus and a drive with the expansion and decimation of capitalism. And because, as Marx argues, that our social being determines our consciousness, hence it stands to reason that people in similar economic circumstances, capitalism, will have much in common, right? Feminism, right? So similar economic conditions will have much in common, because as for Marx, the mode of production, right, be it capitalist system, for instance, the economic system, the mode of production, i.e. the economic system, i.e. capitalism, the mode of production is essentially a definite form of activity, i.e. it encourages materialism, consumerism, right? So the mode of production is essentially a definite form of activity of these individuals, right? A definite form of life expression, right? And a definite mode of life, individualized, right? That is why changes in the way material production, right? Changes in the way materials are produced in a society will invariably lead to changes in the social relation of society in general, right? In other words, as more and more societies, what I'm trying to say is this simply, as more and more societies adopt capitalism as a way to develop their society, the pattern of human behavior and wants and norms and values will converge. Conversely, if more and more societies adopt other economic means of production and relations other than capitalism, the pattern of human behavior and wants and norms and values will diverge. Indeed, in such cases, the concept of feminism may not even arise, right? In a non-capitalist society, you will not find feminism. You will not find the concept of feminism. That is, there will be no cognizance of concepts such as feminism, or right, as feminism or consumerism or materialism, right? So if any societies follow other mode of production, then the very concept of feminism becomes improbable, right? If not impossible. So I will conclude this dialogue with a very vivid example, which I think will divulge and reveal about much about what has been said thus far in this video, right? For a long time in the early parts of the 20th century, right, the cigarette companies in the United States were not satisfied about the fact that relatively half its population, i.e. women, were not smoking, right? Now these tobacco corporations did not like the fact that they were losing out in the market share and profit mainly because women were not smoking. So they were trying to find a way to make women smoke. So to practice resistance and social barrier that kept women from smoking, the cigarette companies, right, turned to the nephew of Sigmund Freud, right? Edward Bernays. He's known as the father of propaganda or father of public relations, right? So Bernays orchestrated, right, staged an advertisement act during the annual Easter Day parade in 1929, where a handful of selected women or debutantes marched down the Fifth Avenue in New York, smoking cigarettes in front of the stage news media, right? And from there, this essentially kicked off the corporate-sponsored feminist campaign that branding cigarettes as torches of freedom. In other words, the way to make women smoke was to appeal to the very appeal to a value which was held to be very close to Americans, right? Freedom. So Bernays came up with this idea of torches of freedom, right? So within 6 weeks, smoking by women became an accepted norm in the US, and sales of cigarette precipitously increased. Now, feminists claim that when that happened, when women started to smoke, right, and all the social barriers were removed. So when they started smoking, now feminists claim that an ancient prejudice that held her to be inferior had been removed. Now there you see, right? Now you judge whether whether that ancient prejudice is removed, whether that's a good thing or not. So this torch of freedom, right? The torch of freedom or flames of freedom were used as a way to demonstrate women's anger against men's inhumanity towards women, right? When in actuality, the torches of freedom, right, was essentially a trick employed by Bernays and the cigarette companies to sell cigarettes to women or to make women smoke. The key to this trick was to use cigarette as a way of challenging the traditional male power and dominance or the patriarchal structure of the society, right? Which no doubt appealed to the woman. You see? Now here is an apt illustration of how corporate interests explicitly manipulated women to propagate feminist sentiments, not because they believe in feminism, but because the very nature of the society and its economic system necessitated mindless, passive, and docile consumption of goods, be it cigarette or material goods, anything. This docile consumption of goods that equated women with freedom, independence, equality between sexes, and dignity of women. You be the judge. Ironically, however, this convincing and authoritative right to smoke by women, right, breaking the social taboo as a way of challenging the male dominance hierarchy, was wrongly seen by the feminists as empowerment of women. Where in the hell smoking is empowerment of women, right? Or I seen this smoking was seen as a woman claiming her life, her independence back, right? From the artificial constraints, right? Retrieving her self-worth, her self-respect, regaining her dignity and honor, taking charge of her personal and professional destiny. Yeah, smoking, yeah. This is more or less the same right now. Like nowadays, women, we encourage women, when women wears skimpy clothes, right? They wear skimpy clothes. They say, oh, woman empowerment. Really? Is that woman empowerment? Really? You equate your woman empowerment with wearing that? Really? Okay. All right. Okay. Right. So feminism, right? Feminism not is not feminism not only being one of the manifestations, one of the many manifestations of values, but also a byproduct of its economic system that dominates the society. It would be erroneous to pass value judgments such as good or bad to it, right? Feminism is neither good nor bad, just as the sun rising from the east and setting in the west is neither good nor bad. It is simply the consequence of the rotation of the earth on its axis revolving around the sun. Likewise, feminism is possible because capitalist system determines the inception of such notions and concepts, which in all reality and objectivity cannot be deemed either good or bad, but must be seen as a product, as a consequence, as a consequences of the dominating economic system that is established to maintain the interests of the dominant group that such system begins. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.